Alright, so today we're going to talk about the first chapter of our O-level biology syllabus, that is life processes. Now, see, what is biology? Biology, it's the study of living things, right? Or living organism. So, to study life processes or living organism, what do we actually study in biology? We mainly study the structure and function of living organism, right? So, to study all of this, we have to first understand the fundamental unit of life. What is the fundamental unit of life? The fundamental unit of life is cell, right? Now, in our O-level biology textbooks, the definition of cell, it's not given properly. They say that cell, it is the building block of life, or that cell makes up living things. They say a lot of things, right? But there is a proper definition of cell in biology. If you guys read any textbooks in the future, or if you guys pursue a career related to biology, you guys will see that cell itself has one proper definition that is followed in each and every textbook. All right. So, what is cell? Cell is the structural and functional unit of living organism. So, we have two key terms here. It is the structural unit and it is the functional unit. Now, why do we say structural unit? Think about it. We say structural unit because cell, they make up specific structures in our body. It makes up tissues. What kind of tissues? For example, bones, right? It is a form of connective tissues. Or think about it, it makes any organs in your body, such as the heart, right? Let me write this down. The heart, it is made up of cardiac cell. We are going to talk about this cell in the blood and circulation chapter, right? Then the brain, it is made up of neurons, right? Then the liver, which is made up of hepatic cell, right? And so we can say that cell builds up our structures. So we say that cell is a structural unit. Now, why the functional unit? It's also called a functional unit because each of this structure, they have a specific function, right? Just to note, for example, the function of cardiac cell, it's to pump blood, right? The function of neurons, it's to process information, right? So each of this cell, they have a specific function as well. Hence, we can say that cells are the structural unit and they are the functional unit. So this definition is very, very important, right? Now, see, so cell makes up everything. Cell, these will join together to form the tissues and the organ, then the organ system, and then ultimately the living organism, right? So cell, we can say it makes up any biological living thing, right? So we can also name this chapter as cellular organization, right? Cellular organization. Right? So to understand cell, we have to understand the structure of a cell. Now, cell, it has three main components. One is the nucleus, one is the cytoplasm, and finally the cell membrane. For any living body to be considered as a cell, it must have these three structures: the nucleus, the cytoplasm, and cell membrane. Right? These are the three important components or three key components that must be present in all cells. Okay. Other than that, cells, they also contain many other structures. We call them organelles. What are organelles? These are minute structures that are present or embedded on top of the cytoplasm, which helps in the function of a cell. We can name a few organelles, right, such as the mitochondria or the Golgi body, right? So these are a few examples of organelles. Now, in our syllabus, we have two types of cell, the animal cell and the plant cell. And regarding these two types of cell, we are going to mainly discuss four important things. We have to identify each organelles, we have to describe the structure of the organelles, we have to write down the function of each organelle, and finally we have to compare the animal cell with a plant cell. As you can see, I've tabulated here, right? So again, in our O-level biology book, the diagram of the animal cell and plant cell that they gave, that is also a bit incomplete, right? They did not give it properly. They just drew a cell, they wrote the cell membrane, the nucleus, the cytoplasm, that's it. But no, we just discussed that cells, they have a lot more structure, right? Which we call organelles. So we have to identify each and every organelles. And a typical animal cell would look like this. So we have to identify each and every organelles that we can see. And a typical plant cell looks like this. Alright, first let's talk about the animal cell. Let's identify our three main components. We can see the nucleus, the cytoplasm, the jelly-like substance, right? And the cell membrane. Now, let's highlight our three important components and then label the remaining organelles, right? So right next to the nucleus, we can see some two saccular structure, one highlighted in blue and one highlighted in purple. The blue one, it's called smooth endoplasmic reticulum. And the purple one, we call it the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Why is one smooth and one rough? Because this is due to the presence of some dotted bodies we call ribosomes. Alright, so you see that the rough endoplasmic reticulum have some dotted body called ribosomes. Other than that, there is another saccular structure present right next to a cell membrane called the Golgi body. Then the red structures called the mitochondria. We all know the function of mitochondria, right? It's the powerhouse of a cell. Then there is a small tiny purple structure, we call them lysosome. Now we might hear this name for the first time, but hold on to it, right? Note that I did not explain the function of any organelles. I'm just identifying them, right? And finally, right next to a cell nucleus, we can see centriole. Obviously, since it's next to a nucleus, it has functions related to cell division. Finally, do you see these green structures here? These are vacuoles, right? Yes, animal cells do have vacuoles, right? It is incorrect to say that it is absent in animal cell. We describe the vacuoles using three words. It is small, temporary, and not centrally spaced. Alright? Always remember, small, temporary, and not centrally spaced, unlike the plants. Right? And these vacuoles, they never contain cells that. Okay? Just to give you guys an idea of what these vacuoles do, it's just for an idea, right? That, you know, when a bacteria, it enters into animal cell, so it's harmful for the animal cell, right? So we need to somehow trap the bacteria. So we trap it by forming this vacuole, right? The bacteria, it gets enclosed inside the vacuole. Hence, we say it's small, temporary, and not centrally spaced. Because once the bacteria is killed inside the vacuole disappears. Right? So this is the complete diagram of the animal cell. And all the organelles that I have labeled, you guys need to know these organelles in details. Right? Now let's look at the diagram of a plant cell. Right over here we can see the nucleus. This would be the cytoplasm. And this is the cell membrane. So again, we have identified our three important structures, right? Now let's identify the structures that are present inside the nucleus, that are present inside the plant cell but absent in animal cell. What are these structures? First of all, from outside to inside, if I go, plant cell have a cell wall made up of cellulose. This is very important. The cell wall, it is made up of cellulose. Animal cell do not have this cell wall, right? Plant cell have chloroplast. And this chloroplast, they contain a green pigment called the chlorophyll, which helps in photosynthesis. But animal cells do not have this chlorophyll or chloroplast, right? Finally, plant cells also have this vacuole. But what's the difference? This is large, permanent, and centrally spaced. If you guys want to say, you guys can also say that this vacuole, it contains cell sap. Alright, so these are the three key structures that the plant cell have but animal cells don't. Other than that, all the structures are the same. We have the rough endoplasmic reticulum, the ribosome making the surface of the rough endoplasmic reticulum rough. Then we have the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. We have the Golgi body, and finally the mitochondria. Alright, so see the remaining structures, these are pretty much similar to the animal cell. Now we already identified the organelles. Now all that is that we have left is the function and the difference. First, let's understand the difference. See the three common difference. The plant cell, they have cell wall, right? It is made up of cellulose. So the cell wall, it is holding the plant cell tightly. It is giving the plant cell this box-like structure and also giving the plant cell its shape, right? And rigidity. But animal cells, they do not have this cell wall, so they do not have a definite structure, right? It can be circular, oval, or rounded. Then the plant cell, it has this chloroplast to make food, but animal cells do not have chloroplast. Plant cells have a large and permanent vacuole containing cell sap, but animal cells only have a temporary one, but never contain cell sap, right? Then we have some other difference. See, I did not mark any centriole or lysosome. This is something the animal cells have. Animal cells have centriole and lysosome, but plant cells, they do not have this centriole and lysosome. So we already talked about their shape, the cell wall, the vacuole, the chloroplast, the centriole and lysosome. Finally, the food storage. This is very, very, very important. Animal cells store food as glycogen, but plant storage as starch. Alright? So this is very important to understand. Alright, so we already identified the organelles, we talked about the structure. Now, and we also talked about the difference. Now all that is left is to understand the function of each organelle. Now over here, we are going to understand the function of each organelle. We're going to give a brief about each organelle, right? But we are going to discuss in detail about the functions during our lectures, okay? So to talk about the organelles, the cytoplasm, we already know it's a jelly-like substance where all chemical reactions take place, right? All chemical reactions occur. The mitochondria, it's the site for powerhouse of a cell, right? But we cannot say that, right? In O levels, we must say it is the site for cellular respiration. Now, a lot of students in their exam paper, they write it is the site for respiration. No, this is not true. It is the site for cellular respiration, not respiration. Remember, respiration is of two types, cellular and the one where you take in air and give out air, right? The inhalation and expiration, that's also respiration. So we have to identify or specify which respiration. Mitochondria is the place where cellular respiration occurs, where food is used to release energy, right? So it's very, very important to mark there is a site for cellular respiration, okay? Then we're going to talk about the ribosome and Golgi body, right? Ribosome, it's the site for protein synthesis. This is very, very important because the majority of our body, it is made up of protein, right? So we have to know that from where it is being synthesized, and ribosome is the site where this protein is made. Then finally, Golgi body. Golgi body, always remember it by 3 terms, is the place where we store, refine, and modify the cell's protein, right? What do? We store, refine, and modify the cell's protein, right? So we can say it is the processing and packaging center of the cell secretion. Now, what do we mean by this? Think about it. Your ribosome made a protein, right? So suppose that protein is made. Now, like protein, I already said that our body is mainly made up of proteins, right? So ribosome, the protein that it made, it must be of a specific type, and that type is determined by the Golgi body, right? The protein from the ribosome, it goes into the Golgi body where it is stored and then refined and modified to become a specific type, such as an enzyme, right? Such as an enzyme that digests carbohydrates, or an enzyme that digests lipids, right? So that specific function of the protein is determined by the Golgi body. Okay. Then we have the endoplasmic reticulum. We have the smooth endoplasmic reticulum and the rough endoplasmic reticulum. And the main function of smooth endoplasmic reticulum is in detoxification of drugs and poison. And the main function of the rough endoplasmic reticulum is in membranous protein production. For smooth endoplasmic reticulum, you guys can also say that it helps in fatty acid and membrane synthesis, but that's not important for O levels. It is very important to state that the detoxifying function of drugs and other poisons. Alright. Then we have the chloroplast, which contains a green pigmented molecule known as chlorophyll, where plants make food. And the vacuole. Over here we stated the function of the plant cell vacuole, that it maintains proper pressure and provides structure and support to growing plant. Right? So these are some of the organelles which I discussed, the function. And on the other side, you can see I've also labeled the structure, which we have to memorize. Okay. Now, we are going to talk about the nucleus. We do have to understand the structure of nucleus in details, right? We have to identify the structure and the function. We all know the function of a nucleus. It controls cellular activities, contains genetic material, and helps in cell division, right? What is important is to understand the structure of the nucleus, right? So let's get started about the structure of the nucleus. See, nucleus itself, it looks like a cell, right? It has a membrane around it, but this membrane, it's not continuous like a normal cell. It has gaps, right? So we say this membrane is nuclear membrane, or some say nuclear envelope, right? Whichever one you want to say, it's completely your choice. Envelope, but we have to call it nuclear envelope or nuclear membrane. Then you see the central mass, circular mass, we call that nucleolus. It's similar to the function of the nucleus inside a cell. The nucleolus controls the function of the nucleus. Okay. Then the gaps between the membrane or the envelope, we call them nuclear pore. Finally, the jelly-like substance inside the nucleus, it's called nucleoplasm, similar to the cytoplasm. Now, do you see this thread-like structure inside the nucleus? These are chromatin, not chromosome. A lot of students say that these are chromosome. No, that's not true. These are chromatin, right? Not chromosome. There is a difference between chromatin and chromosome that we have to understand, right? During cell division, these chromatin, when they become supercoiled and condense, so let me write it down, supercoiled and condense, they become chromosome. Only during cell division can you see these chromosome. Otherwise, we say that these thread-like structure that are barely visible, they are chromatin. Alright? So this is the main difference. A lot of students say that these are chromosomes. No, that's not true. That is incorrect. These are all chromatin. During cell division, when they're supercoiled and condensed, we call them chromosome. Alright? So this is the basic structure of the nucleus. For nucleus, we don't have to understand the function of each structure in detail. We have to understand the function of nucleus as a whole, which is very important. But other than that, we have to identify the structures of a nucleus. Right? Alright. Now, during the beginning of this chapter, I said that cell division, during the beginning of this chapter, I said that life processes can be written as cellular organization, right? So why can we write it as cellular organization? Because cell, they ultimately make up the living things. They organize themselves in such a manner that they'll make up the living structures in the body. So up till now we studied how these organelles, these are joining together to form this cell. Now these cells that have similar structure and function, they will join together to form tissue. Tissues can be many types, right? One example is the one that I gave at the beginning of the class, the connective tissue, right? The example of connective tissue is the bones, the cartilage. Then these tissues that are similar in function, they join to make up the organ, right? Such as the heart, the liver, the brain. The organs, they work together to form organ system. Okay? And finally, the organ system, they join together to form the living organism. Now, in our O-level syllabus, we do have to understand a few organ systems that are present. There are many organ systems, right? Let me write a few down. The main ones are, for example, the circulatory system, which consists of the heart and the blood vessel. The nervous system, which consists of the brain, spinal cord, and the nerves, right? The respiratory system, which consists of the lungs, then trachea, bronchus, right? Then we have the digestive system, where we have the esophagus, the stomach, the intestines, both large and small, right? So these are a few examples of the circulatory system. These are a few examples of the organ system. We have a lot more, right? We have the urinary system, we have the reproductive system, right? But these are some must-to-know system. We have to know this, right? Which part or which organs participate in this organ system. And this is just for an extra point that remember that these three are necessary for survival. The circulatory system that has your heart, the nervous system that consists of the brain, and finally the respiratory system that consists of the lungs. These three are mainly important for survival. Alright? So up till now, we studied everything related to cellular organization. We studied the definition of a cell, we studied the components of a cell, we studied the animal cell and plant cell in details, we studied the differences between them, then we studied in detail about their function of a few of the organelles, then we studied the structure of the nucleus, the function of the nucleus, and then we studied the levels of organization, right? Now our final topic to conclude this class, we are going to talk about two things, not in detail right now, but we are just going to give a brief, right? We are going to talk about the prokaryotes or prokaryotic organism and eukaryotic organism, right? Now what are prokaryotic? Okay, let's break it down. Pro means before. Alright, in biology, pro means before or primitive, right? And karyotic, it comes from the word karyocyte. Alright, karyocyte means cell. So karyotic means cell. So prokaryotic means before cell, right? These are basically cells that do not have a nucleus, or we say that they have a primitive nucleus, right? These are prokaryotic organisms. Such an example is the bacteria, right? They do not have a nucleus, they only have a coiled shaped nucleoid, we say. We're going to study about the structure of bacteria in our second chapter in detail, but just for an idea that this is an example of prokaryotic. And eukaryotic, over here same, eu means after, all right? And karyotic, it comes from the word karyocyte, which means cell, right? So eukaryotic means after cell, or it basically means that the cell has a stable nucleus, right? The ones in basically animal or plant cell. So if we were given to talk about the differences between the prokaryotic and eukaryotic organism, one of them will be the primitive nucleus, and the other one will be that they have a stable nucleus, right? And then we can say there, where are they found? The prokaryotics are examples of bacteria. The eukaryotics are examples of animals or plant cell, right? There are many other differences, right? Think about it. Prokaryotic basically means that a cell, it's not fully developed, right? It's not a fully functional cell, right? So they do not contain many organelles. They do not contain these cell membrane bounded organelles such as these mitochondria or the Golgi body or the endoplasmic reticulum. But the eukaryotics, they do contain this, right? Then there is a difference in their nuclear structure as well. The eukaryotics, they are examples of some diploid. They have diploid chromosome, but the prokaryotics, they have a haploid chromosome, right? So this is the main difference between prokaryotic organism and eukaryotic organism. Prokaryotic means they do not have nucleus, and eukaryotic means they do have nucleus, right? And we have to know the example. The prokaryotics example are bacteria, and the eukaryotics are animal or plant. Just to note, an extra note, always remember, virus is not a cell. It is not classified as a living thing. Remember this. Virus is not a cell. It is not classified as a living thing. This is very, very important. Why is it not a cell? Why is it not classified as a living thing? We'll discuss it later. This is just to note. They sometimes try to confuse you whether virus is a cell or not, or whether virus is living or not, but no. Virus is not a living thing, and virus is not a cell. Right? We say it is an acellular structure. Right? So this is everything regarding cellular organization.